The purpose for our gathering is so that we can understand more about adverse childhood experiences, but also because we want a resilience movement here at North Carolina Central University's campus, and I'm so happy to be working with the Department of Public Health and others. And this is the vision and mission of our organization, but I will skip that for now. We have advisory boards and 42 active members, et cetera. And of course, the name of the movie was Resilience, but what you heard a lot about had to do with ACEs. The strategy, we have to recognize that toxic stress is the largest public health issue of our generation. If you want to improve in major ways, change your frame of reference, change how you see the world, how you think about people, change your paradigm, your scheme for understanding and explaining certain aspects of reality. We all live in our own little bubble, the bubble created by our environment, our upbringing, and what we considered to be normal because that's how we grew up. That's the neighborhood that we lived in. Those were the norms that we found in our family life. But if we shrunk the world's population to the size of a village of 100, let's say there were 100 people here, there'll be 100 people next time, 57 would be Asian, 21 would be European, 14 would be North and South American, 8 would be African, 70 of the 100 would be non-white, 30 would be white, 70 of the 100 would be non-Christian, 50% of wealth would be in the hands of 6 people, and they would all live in the United States, especially the man who won the $1 billion in South Carolina. 80 would live in substandard housing, and only 1 would have a college education. That's what the world looks like, but we don't see the world this way because our impression of the world is where we live, what we watch, who we are around. So we don't have a real perception of what the world is like. Blacks are 2 to 5 times more likely to have bad outcomes across systems in North Carolina, whether that has to do with death from diabetes, infant death, 3rd grade students being below grade level, long-term suspensions, incarcerations, searched on a routine traffic stop, children in foster care, children below 200% poverty, unemployment. So when we see all of those dynamics as well, they also have to do with trauma, but sometimes we don't think of it that way. Implicit bias triggers also. How do we think about the world? The first slide almost that I showed had to do with how we need to change our perception of how we see things. We can have implicit biases based on ability, gender, sexuality, skin tone, ethnicity, age, religion, race, class. And we have to learn to look at people in a different way through a different lens. Adverse community experiences such as concentrated poverty, segregation from opportunity, and community violence contribute to community trauma, which can exacerbate adverse childhood experiences. I look at NCCU as a community. I see NCCU as a city of its own, where there are certain parts of campus that certain things happen in. There are other parts of campus where things don't happen. So in the same way that we look at an environment that's out in the city of Durham or where you came from, then you have the same kinds of things here on NCCU's campus. This makes a case for focusing on preventing and addressing trauma at the community level in Durham, community level here at NCCU, in addition to the growing focus on individual trauma. And so when inequities are high, adverse living conditions, then you see more of the things that you don't want to see, as you see at the top of the tree. When inequities are low, then you see less of them, even though they still are there. Now, if you look at your card and you look at this slide, then you'll see what those adverse childhood experiences are. I'm not going to ask anyone to raise your hand. You have 10 fingers, or you can make a circle in your mind, or just count how many adverse childhood experiences you might have experienced in your life. And this has to do with young people before their 18th birthday. The number of adverse childhood experiences that you have it makes a big difference. And so under abuse, and even when you think about this, if you've ever wondered why your parents were the way that they are, or your grandparents, or your uncles, your aunts, or people that, you just don't understand why they are the way that they are, why do they struggle with some of the things that they struggle with, then this might be a reason as well. So under abuse, if before one's 18th birthday in the home they've experienced physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, under neglect, physical or emotional neglect, under household dysfunction within the household, was there someone with mental illness, mother treated violently, incarcerated relative, substance abuse or substance use, or divorce? 4 or more, that's the key number. If that happens, then these are the kinds of outcomes then that can occur. Lack of physical activity, smoking, alcoholism, drug use, missed work, severe obesity, diabetes, depression, suicide attempts, STDs, heart disease, cancer, stroke, COPD, broken bones. 4 or more. If someone has 6 or more adverse childhood experiences, it could mean a loss of life of 20 years. 20 years less life for 6 or more adverse childhood experiences. So all of this can be really depressing. My score is 9. You wonder which one I don't have. That's a secret. But the point is that one can recover themselves from adverse childhood experiences. This is the main message. It may be the reason this says missed work, but it may mean here missed class. And maybe we don't understand why it is. Sometimes I just don't feel like getting out of the bed. So when someone has high ACEs, some of the outcomes or the way that one interacts with the world can be anger, impatience, fear, mistrust, feeling attacked, stressed out, fatigued, depression, or just generally unhappy. Well, and if we come in contact with someone like that, always remember that we can't change anyone, we can only change our response to them. And I think that we can respond to people in a gentler, kinder way after realizing that maybe they are triggered by something that happened when they were young. Because the brain may forget, but the body remembers. So within the body of someone that has high ACEs, there's something going on. And those triggers can actually cause some of those behavioral health items that we saw. So adolescents and young adults with 4 or more ACEs may seek relief through drinking alcohol, smoking, tobacco, sexual promiscuity, using drugs, overeating, eating disorders, or delinquent behavior. In the movie, you saw the lady, she might have been in her 30s, 40s, and she cried when she remembered something that happened to her when she was a teenager. And so she's one that teaches people how to respond to their adverse childhood experiences, yet her own experience was still hurtful for her. Remember that in adverse childhood experiences, you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, you can't control it. You can help take care of yourself by communicating your feelings and making healthy choices. So the question is not what did you do, the question is what happened to you. And always remember, most of all, that you are more than the worst thing that ever happened to you. Your life didn't stop with the worst thing that you thought happened to you. You continue to live, but now let's see how we can live in a healthier way. Every child, and I believe every adult, every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her. I want you to think about who is your number one. Who is that person that you know that if you call them on the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning, that they would answer the phone and talk to you until you felt better about what was going on. And if you don't have a number one, then we need to find you a number one. Resilience is not a trait that people either have or do not have. Rather, it involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be developed and learned in almost anyone. This is something that a young lady wrote who was on a college campus. She was a senior. She said, last year, on such and such university, the senior joined the Resilience Peer Network. That's what I'm talking about, creating here. A program to support students with coping issues. Well, I don't want to call it coping issues. You just need somebody to talk to. She said she learned to challenge her dark thoughts. One of the most important things that we can remember, not just as young people, but as adults, is that automatic thoughts do not have to be responded to. Automatic thoughts do not have to be responded to. We can call them dark thoughts. We all have them at times. Those thoughts that say, you can't do it, you're not going to pass your test, your life is going to be over next week. Those thoughts are not things that we have to hold on to and say, this is my reality. It's a thought. You don't have to capture it and take it to yourself. So she said, I was always thinking about the future. If I got a bad grade in this class, how will this affect my future and what job will I get? She said instead, she learned to ask herself, what evidence is there for these negative ideas? What evidence is there that you're not going to make it? And you'll find most often that there is no evidence and that those things rarely come to pass. So we need affirmation and acknowledgement, promoting acceptance, create a space for race, encourage the conversation about race. We need racial storytelling, invite personal stories about racial experiences, gain understanding of how lives are impacted by race, validation, confirm the worldview and worth of the student, validate the untapped hero in you. So how does resilience look and feel? Resilience is maintaining a positive view of yourself, having confidence in your strengths and abilities, managing strong feelings and impulses during difficult times, meeting the demands of daily living while also relaxing and re-energizing, trusting and relying on yourself to make good decisions and maintaining a healthy, positive lifestyle. So for some people, this comes, quote unquote, naturally. Meaning that, they have this positive attitude all the time. They get up in the morning, they want to run a 10K, 5K, and that's what they do. Other people, it's like, it's a struggle to put one foot in front of the other. So we have to find and realize what those healthy decision-making strategies are for us personally. And we have to begin with ourselves before we think about taking care of someone else. And we realize that if you're on a plane, put the mask, if the oxygen gets wooky in the plane, put the mask on yourself before trying to help someone else. That seems backwards, especially if we're someone that is always reaching out to help another person. But you have to take care of yourself first. Being in college is stressful. Being in high school is stressful, but being in college is stressful. And we have to realize that there is stress and that we have to deal with that stress. So take care of your own mental health, develop healthy coping devices like regular exercise, reading, listening to music. Some of those things that we may not ordinarily take time to do. Seek out healthy family and friends for support. Use community supports if you need to. Go to the new behavioral health clinic. There's no shame in that. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If it's counseling, counseling is fine. If it's substance use treatment, that's fine. If there's self-help programs, that's fine. Just don't isolate yourself and just stay in a corner in the dark and not allow yourself to live and to live again. So, of course, I had to do something like this. And so your assignment is to make it to your next birthday. Do whatever you need to do in order to stay healthy enough to make it to your next birthday.